Welcome back, riders. Today is number 2 for 25 days of coasters. I had an incredibly hard time picking my number 1 coaster this year. In fact, I had today's coaster at number 1 for maybe like a month, but it just didn't sit right with me. Something felt off, so I decided to switch them back. Today's coaster is Ride to Happiness at Plopsaland De Panne. Ride to Happiness is going to be unlike any roller coaster I have done for 25 days of coasters. It opened in 2021 at Plopsaland De Panne, which is a park in De Panne, Belgium. It was built by German manufacturer Mach Rides, making it the only Mach Rides coaster to make my top 25. Ride to Happiness is their extreme spinning coaster model. This was the second and, as of right now, the last extreme spinning coaster they have built, hopefully so far. The first one being Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City. I rode Time Traveler in 2022 and I was a little underwhelmed, but they really kicked it into high gear with Ride to Happiness. This coaster is 108.3 feet tall, reaches a top speed of 55.9 miles per hour, and has 5 inversions across its 3,018.4 feet of track. I was able to get 17 rides on it during my day at the park this summer. The theming for Ride to Happiness is good, albeit a little different. The coaster is themed to the world famous Tomorrowland EDM festival, which is held annually in Belgium. It's just ginormous. They've reached attendance as high as 600,000 people. It's a huge thing in Europe. I mean, EDM in general, but especially Tomorrowland. This translates to like some kind of variation of like a futuristic steampunk kind of vibe for the theming. There are two buildings you will go through. One is the station, and the other just being kind of like a small section of indoor queue. These buildings have a lot of like gold colored aesthetics to them, and then you have some other colorful parts, like they have these glass stained windows, or at least, they look like it. I don't know if they're real or not. They have those mixed in there. You enter the queue in the first building, and it is pretty cool in there. They have some cool like theming displays, and they have nice lighting in there to complement them. Then you have an outdoor portion for the queue, and this is kind of more like a garden. It's well kept and it's really pretty. You start making your way to the station. There is another short portion of queue in the same building as the station, this one having some more like of the theming displays. When you make it to the station, it is a little more bare in there, except for one exception. There is like this hypnotic robot lady on a screen at the front end of the station who's like talking to you, the riders. The most famous catchphrase she says: Live today, love tomorrow, unite forever. It's just ingrained in my brain. And then I would say there is no theming during the actual ride, with one exception. Ride to Happiness has an awesome EDM onboard audio soundtrack. As you know, I love onboard audio, and this one complements the ride extremely well. It matches like the pacing and the layout really well. It's EDM. I like EDM, I guess. Oh, it so good. There's no other theming during the ride though, but the scenery is pretty nice that you pass through. You pass over some water, and the last helix is very nice with all this like greenery, like kind of the garden vibe. It's very pretty everywhere. So I have something I want to touch on about the ride as a whole before I talk about the layout. I want to reiterate that Ride to Happiness is a spinning coaster. So what does that mean? The trains spin left and right throughout the ride. This is mostly based on weight distribution. So in short, no two rides are the same on Ride to Happiness. There might be one ride where you go through the vertical loop backwards, and the next ride you go through it forwards or maybe sideways. This makes Ride to Happiness extremely re-rideable on top of already being a world-class roller coaster, and it always keeps you on your toes too. I will touch on some specific elements that I think are better, like forwards versus backwards, but just know for the entire ride, you literally could be in any orientation. The ride starts with a JoJo roll, just like fellow 25 Days with Coaster participant Copperhead Strike. The one on Ride to Happiness is even better. On top of the spinning, the JoJo roll on Ride to Happiness also turns to the right slowly, which gives some slightly different forces, and it also feels like you're just hanging upside down for even longer than Copperhead Strike. Hands down, some of, if not the best hang time in the world, which you all know I love hang time. After this is the first launch. Mock launches are usually very lackluster, and I would say Ride to Happiness is slightly above average in terms of mock launches, but even that is not saying all that much. It does have some decent speed at the end, but the acceleration it takes to reach the top speed is nothing impressive. However, you are slowly spinning during the launch, so that is definitely enjoyable and makes the launch good overall. This leads into the top hat. If you are sitting in the front, this gives some pretty wicked ejector airtime at the top as you go over it. This is followed by a small turn to the left where you are still like at the top, so this helps build anticipation for one of the best parts of the ride, and that is the drop down the top hat. This drop is absolutely bonkers. It rides very similarly to the drop out of the station on Time Traveler, if you have ridden that. This is one of the elements that is absolutely just on another planet. If you are riding sideways or backwards, it is a vertical, or at least near vertical plunge that is chock full of ejector airtime. And if you could ride that going sideways or backwards, that is extremely rare and just absolutely heavenly, the best. The drop is followed by a banana roll, a vertical loop, and a zero G roll, all in that order. And honestly, I think I would rank them in the reverse order. I don't really remember anything crazy about the banana roll. The vertical loop can give you a pinch of hang time, and it's also pretty fun while spinning. The zero G roll is like a little appetizer to an element that will be coming up soon, but it gives some pretty wicked forces, and this is by far my favorite inversion in the first half of the ride. Well, excluding the JoJo roll, but the JoJo roll is like the real appetizer of the ride. But anyways, Ride to Happiness hits a little bit of a lull at this moment. After the zero G roll, there's this turn that leads into another turn, and it's kind of like an S bend, but you're just going too slow to get any real force. It's just kind of like meandering around, it feels like. This then leads to the second launch, which honestly isn't too memorable. This is similar to Copperhead Strike's second launch, where there's like this small hump during the launch, but compared to everything else Ride to Happiness has to offer, this element is really just not memorable. But what follows the second launch is absolutely memorable. It is pure chaos, and I would kind of say it's like borderline demonic. You have a flying snake dive, and I am not even going to try to describe what this feels like. Maybe it feels like you're in a car that you're inside of that's like rolling over in a crash, except you don't get any of like the pain or broken bones associated with it. You're just moving around like a rag doll. From here, Ride to Happiness still ends on a strong note. After you exit the flaying snake dive, you hit a sustained ejector airtime hill, followed by a left-hand turn that gives some pretty good positive Gs, which is then followed by a double up with quicker pops of ejector airtime into the brake run. All three airtime moments are similar to the main drop, in that they are exceptionally better if they are taken sideways or backwards. Definitely an extremely strong ending to the ride. Ride to Happiness is chaotic in a great way. It is a little on the short side, and it does have a couple moments where it lulls around. So I think that is ultimately what made me feel like it was not right to have as my number one. But obviously, my number two is still highly regarded. Ride to Happiness has exceptional hang time, one of the best drops in the world, airtime that you can take sideways or backwards, really good airtime at that, a killer onboard audio soundtrack, and some of the best inversions in the world. This was pretty easily my favorite coaster I rode in Europe this summer. That's all I have for Ride to Happiness. Have you been on it? Or maybe Time Traveler? How do you think Ride to Happiness looks to you? Let me know in the comments below. If you want a more in-depth review with some better footage, check out Canopy Coaster's review that I linked in the description below. Hope to see you all for my #1 coaster tomorrow, which I'm pretty sure you can figure out what it is by now if you know me. But anyways, hope to see you all tomorrow anyways. Push down, pull up, exit to the right. Hope you enjoyed the video, and go have your greatest day yet. Choo choo, bye!